Hey, welcome. Today we are diving into something that feels like it defines you, your memory. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about it is kind of wrong? That your past isn't some perfect recording, but something way more creative, way more flexible, and honestly, way cooler. Let's get into it.
So let me just ask you this straight up. When you think back to a big moment in your life, your graduation, a first date, does it feel like you're just pressing play on a video? For pretty much all of us, yeah, that's what it feels like. We trust our memories, especially the really vivid ones, to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But should we?
And this is where the science just gets so fascinating. Dr. Daniel Schacter, who's a total giant in this field, he put it perfectly. Memory isn't a playback machine. It's a constructive activity. So think of it less like a perfectly organized file cabinet and more like a workshop, where you're constantly piecing the past back together.
Okay, let's talk about the most powerful memories we have, right? They're called flashbulb memories. You know the ones, where you were when you heard about a major world event. They feel absolutely burned into our brains, like a perfect high-resolution snapshot, packed with detail and emotion. We are positive we remember them exactly as they happened.
But oh boy, the studies tell a very different story. Check this out. After the Challenger space shuttle disaster, researchers had students write down exactly how they heard the news. Then, a few years later, they asked them again. Look at the difference. The first time, the person says they heard it in class, then went to watch TV. But 3 years later, the memory has morphed. Now they're sitting in their dorm room with a friend when the news just came on. Same person, same event, totally different memory. Wild, right?
So, this leads us right into our first big idea. It's time to bust the video recorder myth.
For the longest time, we all kind of thought of memory as being, well, reproductive or archival. You know, the idea that our brain is like a library or a computer hard drive. You experience something, you file it away, and when you want to remember it, you just pull out the file and hit play. Perfectly preserved. But as we're starting to see, that's just not what's happening.
So if it's not a recording, then what in the world is it? Well, that brings us to the modern view. Memory is reconstructive.
And this isn't some brand new idea either. It actually goes way, way back to the 1930s with this incredibly smart psychologist named Sir Frederick Bartlett. He had a hunch that memory was a much more active, creative thing, and he designed this beautifully simple experiment to prove it.
So here's what he did. He gave his participants, who were all British, a Native American folktale to read called The War of the Ghosts. And he picked it on purpose because it was totally foreign to them. It had weird details, supernatural stuff that just didn't fit into their world. Then, he just asked them to tell the story back from memory, again and again over time.
And what happened was amazing. The story didn't just fade, it changed. It got shorter, for one. All the weird details they couldn't make sense of, like the ghosts, they just got dropped. And here's the kicker. Their brains actively altered the story to make more sense to them, to fit their own cultural framework, what Bartlett called their schema. So canoes became boats. The memory wasn't being retrieved, it was being rebuilt on the fly.
And that is the heart of reconstructive memory. It's an active job of piecing things together. When there are gaps in a memory, your brain doesn't just go, oh well, blank space here. No way. It fills in those gaps using what you already know, what you believe, what you expect, to create a story that feels complete and makes sense.
So let's just put this side by side. The old myth was that memory is a copy. The reality? It's a construction. We don't replay the past, we piece it together. And this is the most important part. The goal of your memory system isn't perfect pixel for pixel accuracy. The goal is to create a story that's coherent and meaningful to you, right now.
Okay, so the theory sounds solid, but what's actually going on inside our skulls? Let's pop the hood and look at the neuroscience. Let's look at the brain's own time machine.
Modern technology has given us this incredible gift. Using fMRI scanners, we can literally watch the brain in action. So scientists designed this really clever experiment where they had people do two things that you'd think would be completely different.
All right, task number 1. Remember a real event from your past, super vivid, like your last birthday party. Got it? Okay. Task number 2. Vividly imagine a plausible event in your future, maybe an upcoming vacation. One looks back, one looks forward. They have to use different brain systems, right? Nope, wrong. The results were absolutely stunning. Remembering the past and imagining the future lit up a nearly identical network in the brain. It's like, to your brain, reconstructing the past and constructing the future are practically the same job.
Scientists now have a name for this system, the core network, and it involves some major players like the hippocampus, which you've probably heard of for its role in memory, and parts of the prefrontal cortex. This network is basically our engine for mental time travel. It lets us shuttle back to the past and rocket forward into the future.
But why? Why would evolution build our brains this way? And this leads to a really powerful idea about what memory is actually for. It's not about the past. It's an engine for the future.
It's called the constructive episodic simulation hypothesis. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful, but the idea behind it is simple and kind of revolutionary. It says the #1 job of your memory isn't to be some dusty old photo album of the past. Its main gig is to give you the raw materials, the building blocks, you need to imagine, simulate, and plan for what's coming next.
So, how does it work? Well, think about, say, an upcoming job interview. Your brain doesn't just pull out one file labeled interview. No, it grabs bits and pieces from all over the place. Other interviews, tough conversations, movies you've seen, then it recombines them into a brand new simulation of this specific future event. It lets you mentally rehearse, to play it out, to anticipate what might happen. It's an incredible survival tool.
But this amazing creative flexibility has to come at a price. And that brings us right back to where we started, all those weird memory errors.
I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? A system that's built to take memories apart and remix them is obviously going to make some mistakes along the way. This explains so many of those common memory glitches. Misattribution, that's just mixing up details from different events. Suggestibility, that's when you accidentally weave outside info into your memory. And bias is when how you feel right now totally changes how you remember the past.
So here it is, the big takeaway. These so-called sins of memory, they're not just bugs in your software. They're the necessary side effects, they're the price of admission for having a brain that can imagine, plan, and create a future.
Which really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If your memory isn't some sacred, perfect record of the past, but it's actually a dynamic, creative toolkit for building your future, how does that change the way you think about your own past? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.